Hey everyone, Mr. McWhorter here. How you doing? Hope you're all feeling great, having a rad day. Here's our Unit 4 lesson video where we learn about rewriting equations and formulas. This can be helpful in science class because the further you get in science, the more you're going to use math and wacky formulas, and being able to rearrange formulas for your benefit is going to be a valuable skill. In math, an equation that has two or more variables is called a literal equation. And we can rewrite literal equations by solving for one of the variables. Okay, here's the main 5 steps. Although steps 1 and 5 we're going to get to a little bit later on, because those are for like more complex versions. The more simple versions use the main 3 steps in the middle here. So first, if there's distributing and combining like terms, that would be the first step. Step 2 is our main step. We're going to use addition and subtraction to get all of our target variable terms on one side and all the other variable terms on the other side. So we're going to be told like a certain variable to solve for. That'll be our target variable. And we need to get every term that has that variable on one side and every term that doesn't have it on the other side. Next, if there's more than one term that has the variable we're trying to solve for, we need to factor that out. If there's not, then there's just one term and we just have to divide by the coefficient. If there is more than one term that has our target variable, then we have to factor that out. And then step 4 would be, if we did factor out our target variable, we would divide both sides by whatever's left in the parentheses. And if we didn't have to factor out because there was only one term that had our target variable, then we would divide both sides by the coefficient. And then if there's a way to reduce the fraction at the very end, we would simplify and reduce that fraction. All right, here's our first example. We're going to solve the literal equation, 3y plus 4x equals 9. We're going to solve it for y. Remember our main steps, we're going to mostly be using steps 2, 3, and 4. So step 1 is distribute and combine like terms. There's no distributive property because there's no group that's multiplied by a number. And there's no like terms on either side. 3y and 4x aren't like terms, and 9 is a constant term all by itself on the right side. So we're on to step 2, using addition or subtraction to get all of our target variable terms on one side. We're solving for y, so y is our target variable. So that means we want to have everything with y on one side and everything without y on the other side. We could accomplish that by getting this 4x, the plus 4x, off of the left side. Okay, so we didn't have any step 1 to do, and in order to accomplish step 2, we need to subtract 4x from both sides, because that will get, if you look at what the result will be, subtracting 4x is going to cancel the 4x off of the left side. Now we'll have negative 4x plus 9 on the right and 3y on the left. And that takes care of step 2, because now we have everything with our target variable y on the left and everything without it over on the right. Now, for step 3, we don't need to factor out the target variable because it only shows up in one term. So step 3, we don't have to do anything. Then step 4 would be divide both sides by what's left in the parentheses, unless you didn't have to do step 3, and then you divide both sides by the coefficient. So the coefficient of y is 3, so we need to divide both sides by 3. And since 3 doesn't go into 4, we can't reduce this fraction. It does go into 9, but it doesn't go into 4, so we can't reduce the whole fraction. So we get y equals negative 4x plus 9. And since we can't reduce that fraction, that is our answer. In example 2, we're going to be solving for x. And you can see that on the right side of the equation, we have x in more than one term. So that means that we are going to need to do step 3, where we're going to factor out our target variable. Okay, distribute and combine like terms. There's no distributing, no combining like terms to do yet. Use adding or subtracting to get all the target variable terms on one side. X is our target variable, and we already have everything with X on the right and everything without it on the left. So step 2 is done. Step 3 is to factor out the target variable if it shows up in more than one term. And X does show up in more than one term, so we're going to factor out the X on the right side. And if we divide out the X from the first term, we just have 3, and if we divide out the X from the second term, we have 5z. So when we factor out the X, what's left in the parentheses is 3 plus 5z. So there's step 3. Step 4, to get X by itself, right now X is multiplied by the group 3 plus 5z, so we need to divide both sides by that group. It'll cancel out on the right, and we get Y divided by 3 plus 5z equals X. And let's see, this isn't going to simplify at all because there's only Y on top, and we don't know if it goes into 3 or 5z, so we can't cancel anything. So there's no reducing, and our solution is X equals Y divided by the group 3 plus 5z. In example 3, we are given the formula for the surface area of a rectangular prism. Surface area equals 2 times length times width plus 2 times length times height plus 2 times width times height. And we are supposed to solve for L. So there's no distributing, no combining like terms yet. Step 2 would be use addition or subtraction to get all of our terms with the target variable on one side and everything without on the other. Target variable is L, so I've got these two terms with L, and then the plus WH does not have L, so I need to get it off of that side. So I'm going to subtract 2WH from both sides. It'll cancel off the right side, and then on the left side, S minus 2WH. S and minus 2WH aren't like terms, so we can't combine them into one term, we just leave them. All right, so now we have everything with L on the right and everything without L on the left. So our next job would be to factor out the target variable if it shows up in more than one term. And we have L in two terms here, so we're going to factor out the L, and then what would be left inside would be 2W plus 2H. So this is what it looks like when we factor out the L. And then to get L by itself, we need to divide both sides by what's left in the parentheses. So we're going to divide both sides by 2W plus 2H. Cancels on the right side, and we get S minus 2WH divided by 2W plus 2H equals L. And we're not going to be able to simplify that fraction, so that is our solution. L equals S minus 2WH over 2W plus 2H. All right, here are some formulas that we're going to need for the rest of this lesson. We're going to convert this temperature formula later on from solved for Celsius to getting solved for Fahrenheit. Simple interest, I equals PRT. I is the amount of interest you earn. P is the principal, which means the initial amount you deposit. R is the annual interest rate written in decimal form. And T is the time in years, and we'll see how to use that information in an example in just a minute. And D equals R times T, the distance equals the rate times the time. All right, so our first example with these is going to be solving the temperature formula for F. So right now we've got C equals 5/9 times the group F minus 32. So normally our choices are when we have a group, we can distribute the whatever's multiplied by it, or we could divide both sides by that. If we try to distribute 5/9, it's going to give us more fractions. So it'd be a cleaner solution to just divide both sides by 5/9. But dividing fractions is kind of wonky. But dividing a fraction, or dividing by a fraction, is the same as multiplying by the reciprocal of that fraction. So we can multiply both sides of this equation by 9 over 5. Because what happens on the right side is 9 times 5 is 45, 5 times 9 is 45. You've got 45 over 45, which is 1, and then 1 times the group just gives you the group. So the resulting equation we get there, the 9/5 times 5/9 basically cancels out because they multiply to 1. And so we get 9 over 5c equals f minus 32. Then to get f by itself, the last thing we need to do is add 32 to both sides. So we've got 9/5 c plus 32 equals f. So solving the temperature formula for F, we get Fahrenheit equals 9/5 times Celsius plus 32. Now we'll be able to use that information, that formula, to answer a question here. Which has the greater surface temperature, Mercury or Venus? Well, here we have Mercury's temperature given in Celsius and Venus's temperature given in Fahrenheit. So if we have this formula that gets us Fahrenheit, so we could use our Celsius temperature here and convert it to Fahrenheit and then compare the two temperatures. So our Celsius temperature is 427, so we're going to substitute 427 in for C in this formula. Then we're just going to use the calculator to do 9 divided by 5 times 427. 9 divided by 5 times 427 is 768.6. Then we'll take 768.6 and add 32. So the surface of Mercury is about 800.6 degrees Fahrenheit. So it looks like Venus is hotter by about 64 degrees, well 63.4 degrees hotter. Now for this example, we're going to use the interest formula for simple interest, I equals PRT. And you deposit $5,000 in an account that earns simple interest. After 6 months, the account earns $162.50 in interest. We need to find out what is the annual interest rate. So we're trying to solve for R. So if we want to solve for R, we're going to divide both sides by P and T. So we get that the rate is the interest divided by principal times time. Okay, so it says right here the interest earned is $162.50, so I is $162.50. The initial investment, or the principal, was $5,000, so P equals 5,000. Time is measured in years. 6 months is half of a year, so T equals 0.5. So now we're just going to plug in the numbers we have for I, for P, and for T. So I was $162.50. We're going to divide by 5,000 times 0.5. And I'll show you with an old calculator how you got to do that. This calculator doesn't have parentheses, so I have to multiply the bottom first and then do 162.50 divided by that. So 5,000 times 0.5 is 2,500. So I need to do 162.5 divided by 2,500. 162.5 divided by 2,500. And I get 0.065. Okay, but our interest rate should be expressed as a percent and not a decimal. So we need to multiply by 100, which moves the decimal place over twice, and that would be 6.5% interest. All right, and that's the end of that lesson. Make sure you take really good notes that you'll be able to use later for funsies and learning. Bye-bye.